In this video, I want to talk about the resurgence of support for socialism in Eastern Europe. Now, in the description of this video is a link to an article by the CPGBML, which collects opinion polls from all kinds of Eastern European countries that shows that the support for socialism is on the rise. And in fact, even in 2009, a majority of people in Eastern Europe preferred living in Eastern Europe to the bourgeois democracy of Germany today. Now, the point of this video is not to go over the statistics. Those are there available for you to read. You could check those out for yourself and decide what they mean. But here's what's interesting. It's growing all over Eastern Europe. And those who are so vehemently opposed to anything socialist whatsoever are scratching their heads, many of them in anger. Why? How is this possible? How could this be happening? It was an evil, totalitarian, baby-eating monstrousness of epic proportions. Did it ever occur to you that you may be wrong? That maybe everything you've been fed about socialism was a lie? Maybe people had this desire to not suffer from alienation, even if they didn't know that's what they're suffering from currently. Maybe many of them liked having full-time jobs that could actually afford a place to live and eat. Maybe people liked having countries that they could be proud of. Instead of, poverty-stricken U.S. client states that frequently are filled with a bunch of racists. I don't think it's anything controversial to say that there's also a great deal of white nationalist sentiment inside these European countries. But it's interesting to note the cognitive dissonance by people who are against socialism. They see these numbers and they can't figure out why this is happening, because there's no room in their ideology, their anti-communist ideology, to accept where they could possibly be wrong. Now, you understand, when you're pro an ideology, you can frequently see the flaws that are in it, and you can understand why certain people would oppose it. But when your primary ideology is anti something else, that's a different story in general. That makes it much more difficult to see the points that would cause people to disagree with you. If you believe on the premise that socialism was this horribly evil thing, nobody ever wanted it, it was this horrible, evil, totalitarian system that was installed at gunpoint, then none of this nostalgia would exist. If we believed every dystopian horror story that was ever given about the Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Union, nobody would want socialism back if they were true. The simple fact is they're not. They're not true. And that's what people can't get through their heads. What anti-communists cannot get through their heads. Because it's completely irrational for them to think anybody could possibly want that kind of evil empire back. It's almost to the point of cognitive dissonance of libertarians, where literally any proof you show them, they instantly dismiss. Either mostly as just saying it's not true. Oh, you give them hard facts, decades of economic data, and then it's oh, it's just made up. I don't have to tell you that. You've seen libertarians do this again and again and again. LOL, the state, everything, no matter what, even if it makes absolutely no sense. So, the point of this is not just to point out the numbers, and that the numbers are true, and that there is growing support for returning socialism to the Eastern Bloc, but to point out the irrationality of those who oppose it. Now, you could say you don't like socialism because you're a member of the bourgeoisie. Okay, perfectly understand. You don't want your interests undermined for that of the proletariat. Okay, that makes perfect sense. That is why you are considered a class enemy. But when you see people who are not in that position spouting all kinds of complete nonsense that completely contradicts this reality of people wanting it back, and you've got Like, it's just it's mind blowing. It's like ridiculously mind blowing. It's like, for me, watching U.S. right wingers talk about universal health care. Like, they could not be any more wrong. Like, it's complete nonsense. I've lived under universal health care my entire life. I've worked in the Niagara health system. So I know how things are done, for the most part. I was no administrator, but I was there, and I saw generally how it works. And none of that shit is true. There's no death panels that decide if grandma's going to die. That's why you have do not resuscitate orders. That's why you have families that do make the decision. There has never been a death panel that chose whether or not grandma died. That has never existed in Canada. That is not a real thing. The only exception might be is if someone has no family and they're just there by themselves. They cannot find any loved ones to make any decisions, etc. That might be the only exception, in which case that would actually come down to the individual doctor itself, not some kind of panel. So there's a certain joy that you get, and I know you get it too, when you see these numbers, and then you see right-wingers just flip out. You're like, I can't believe this, blah, 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 blah. Because that's their brain melting down from being able to understand why anyone would disagree with them. That's their brain melting down from someone not being able to understand that they're wrong. I mean, how many times do you see this? When someone is given proof that they're wrong, they freak out. Look at Alex Jones. Anytime somebody rationally explains something to him, and he immediately goes into this angry tirade. Oh, you're just Illuminati, fake news, blah, blah, blah. It's like the same kind of thing. Just a little bit less articulated than Alex Jones would tend to do it. Alex Jones tends to talk a lot, but not say very much. Whereas libertarians, it's more like just instant outrage with fewer words than Alex Jones would use. But I know you see that too. I know you see, you, my viewers, etc., see this. You see people flip out when they can't understand why somebody would want socialism back when it was so evil. So, I just thought that was interesting. That's something I wanted to point out. That's something I wanted to say something about. Because I think it's something that we've all seen at one point or another. So by all means, go to the CPGBML post, check out all the data that's available. There's a ton of it. There's got to be like more than 20 countries listed, and some data or another to support the positions that I talked about inside this video. So please go there. And if you do live in the UK and you do want to take the first worldist path, then I would certainly suggest that you support the CPGBML. And you know what, guys? Have a nice day.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.